once we've got it. So I'd just like to thank you all for coming here today to celebrate the life of our father and his husband. My brothers and I will be reading a eulogy which is taken from Dad's autobiography, which he wrote a few years back called Hanna Antics. I think that's how it's pronounced, Hanna Antics. Anecdotes, sorry. My apologies. We've broken it up into 3 sections. We'll each read a part of it. Then we'll just share some of our memories, and I'd like to invite anyone else to come up who wants to share some of their memories of Dad, Graeme, as well. And then it's going to be a very, very relaxed, casual affair today. Also, I have a notebook up here at the front, so I invite everyone to come and take a page, write your name, your association to Dad, and just write some memories in that, and then there'll be a gift for them at the end of the day. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Tim to start off. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's great that you can come and join us and celebrate Dad's long life. I'll be presenting a very brief version, part 1, of Dad's written life story. My dad's title is Autobiography, Hanna Antidotes. A collection of Dad's antidotes that tells you almost everything you need to know about the man. It was not one for grand self-promotion. In fact, he opened his own life story with the self-deprecating subtitle, Memoirs of a Mediocre Man. We who know him beg to differ. Dad wrote his story over many years, beginning in 2011, at the insistence of our mum Gwen, who he noted with characteristic dry humour. She has not begun to write her own story, as I sit here writing my own. He intended it for Gwen, herself, Rob and Matt, and for his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He said people would remember him for what they knew of him in life, and that the memory would not be changed by any sparkling eulogy. We will simply tell his story in his own words and let him speak for himself. Graeme Lindsay Hanna was born on the 4th of October 1932 in Landsill Private Hospital in Ascot Vale, Melbourne. He was the youngest of 5 children, Beth, Jack, Warwick and Helen, with age gaps so large that, as he put it, did not have a brother or sister to play with in the way that siblings born closer together do. Dad grew up in a spacious 2-storey brick house at 133 Woodland Street, Waterson, right on the northern edge of suburban Melbourne in those days. Beyond the houses, across the road, were open paddocks, and beyond the paddocks was Essendon Aerodrome. Dad was plain mad from the very start. He described watching Douglas DC-2s, DC-3s, de Havilland Dragon Rapids, and Lockheed Electric flying over the house on their approach to land. And he still has clear mental picture of the first Douglas DC-4 as it made its first landing into Essendon. In 1948, he flew from Brisbane to Melbourne in a DC-3 on a school trip. Dad was extremely grateful to his parents for allowing him to fly in one of these aircraft that he admired as a young boy. His chapter on this period was called An Exciting Time to Have Lived. That his lifetime spanned perhaps the most remarkable period of human progress in history. He remembered when the family radio was was a large piece of furniture standing over a metre tall, and he lived to listen to digital radio, which was a gift from the family for his 80th birthday. He remembered listening to the Test cricket relayed by shortwave radio, with commentators tapping with a pencil on the desk to simulate the sound of bat hitting ball. He lived to watch cricket on high-definition TV with microphones inside the stumps, and he often chose to mute the commentary. Dad wrote his first computer program in 1965 in Fortran, just before going to hospital for a knee operation. Dad's department head, Terry Walker, kindly visited Dad in hospital and brought the results of his first run. A batch of A3 fan-folded paper, the best part of 20mm thick, with not a single character printed on it anywhere. He did manage to get his program running properly sometime later. He was also no stranger to adventure of the unauthorised kind. As a young boy during the war, he and his friend Lindsay crawled through a hole under the fence surrounding a dump of cast-off military hardware in the paddocks near home. Dad had his eye on one of the British tin hats used by soldiers in the war. He got one and kept it under his bed for a few days, until encountering a policeman while on his hands and knees, easing his way out of the exit hole one afternoon on his way home from Sunday school. The next morning he was out of bed early, tin hat in hand, back to the dump and threw it back over the fence. The police, he noted with relief, did not follow up on taking his details. His schooling took him first to Essendon Grammar School and then to Wesley College in Melbourne. His officer training school report read, "This student made good progress during the course. He maintains good control and has good instructional ability." Dad's own assessment was rather more modest. He noted that had the war broken out and he had been drafted, the enemy would have been at a serious advantage unless he was given intensive retraining. He went on to the University of Melbourne, majoring in metallurgy and chemistry, sharing the Argus Prize for first place in metallurgy, with fellow student who went on to become Professor of Chemistry at Arizona State University. Dad worked on nuclear fuels and earned the nickname Hawkeye Hanna from British engineers, after he spotted microscopic blisters inside a nuclear fuel element that no one else could see. Having figured out how to mark the blisters using a technique he'd read about one lunchtime in Time magazine. This serendipitous thinking was very much Dad. He completed a Bachelor of Science degree and then a Master of Science degree. He was ruthless in his self-assessment. Nearly 60 years later, and in Dad's words, "I cringe when I thought about my Master of Science work. No obvious scientific method, and completely lacking in groundwork." The Master of Science was nevertheless awarded, and he cheerfully credited Graham's excellent typing of his thesis as its outstanding feature. So here ends part one. Rob will continue with part two.
This is Graeme Hanna and a Life in Science. It was April 1956 when Graham's friend John Berryman arranged a blind date for him with a young woman named Gwen. Graham had just graduated with his Bachelor of Science degree and John was graduating with his Bachelor of Commerce at the same ceremony, and they thought it would be the right thing to celebrate together that evening. John's new girlfriend, Glenys, herself a product of a blind date of only 3 weeks standing, helped arrange the introduction. Dad collected Gwen from her father's home in North Kew. He later wrote, "I still have a clear picture in my mind of our first meeting. The father had opened the front door to me, and we stood in the entrance hall very briefly before Gwen, wearing a deepish green skirt and jacket, joined us with what I have always thought to be a few nervous bouncy steps." He was careful to be honest about it. It was not love at first sight, but rather a revealed realisation that the evening ahead was not going to be a disaster. What sealed the deal was the discovery that they were both heading to the holiday resort of Ocean Grove the following weekend, which, as he wrote, made it much easier to agree to meet again. The rest, as he said, is history. They married soon after that year on the 7th of July 1956. Dad had been awarded an Atomic Energy Commission studentship in the last year of his Masters in Science. At this time, while the research establishment was under construction at Lucas Heights, the Australian Atomic Energy Commission was recruiting scientific staff and sending them to the UK for work experience and training. His studentship had kept him in contact with the AEC, and when another position in metallurgy was advertised in late 1956, he applied and was recruited. His job in England was to make a potential nuclear fuel material called uranium beryllium from mixtures of uranium and beryllium powders. He never really spoke about how successful or what that was or where it stood in the scheme of things, so I wish I could have been able to ask him that. In March 1957, Graeme and Gwen boarded the Bristol Britannia, one of the first passengers to fly on that aircraft on the UK-Australia run, and headed to England, where Dad had been posted to the Atomic Energy Research Establishment at Harwell, Berkshire. The plane stopped at Darwin, Jakarta, Singapore, Calcutta, Karachi, Bahrain, Beirut, Istanbul, Zurich, and eventually London. It was nicknamed the Whispering Giant for its quiet exterior, although Dad noted that the passenger interior remained less tranquil. Their ears rang for 2 days after arrival. Their accommodation in England included, memorably, the Mistress Suite at Carrier House, a late Victorian mansion at Goring-on-Thames that had been built by the Earl of Sandwich for his mistress, who was still in residence as their landlady. The suite came with an enormous bath sitting on 4 large gargoyle-type feet. Plenty of room for 2, Dad noted, without further comment. They returned to Australia in December 1958 and built a house in Kaiwong Street, Gowie Bay, where, when they first moved to the area, the postman still delivered mail on horseback. In 1971, the whole family, Graeme, Gwen, Tim, Rob and Matt, set off for Vienna, where Graeme had been posted as Atomic Energy Attaché at the Australian Embassy and as alternate to the Australian resident representative to the International Atomic Energy Agency. Vienna suited him. He relished the complexity of his work, navigating the diplomacy of the Cold War, the International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors, and the intricate politics of nuclear non-proliferation. He worked alongside extraordinary characters. Brigadier Fergus McGaddy, whose Google biography described him as possession of an unruffled self-assurance, a ready wit, and a sense of occasion, and a will to win. The formidable Maurice Carmel Tim's, the Australian Atomic Energy Commission's Executive Commissioner, who was in turn charming and autocratic, and who once phoned Dad at 3 in the morning from Sydney to dictate telegrams he wanted sent without going through the embassy system. Dad drew the line at that. When instructed to contact the UK delegate while bypassing the Australian ambassador, he telegrammed back that he believed there was no way he could do this. Tim's response, delivered on the way to the airport at the end of his last visit to Vienna, was, "Yes, don't do that again or you'll be on the first plane home." Dad was not sent home. There were lighter moments too. At an Australian Day reception hosted by the ambassador's wife, who had a habit of decorating rooms with bowls of rose petals, Dad watched his Canadian counterpart, without looking down, take several petals from a side table and stuff them into his mouth. Dad comments, "I knew what was happening, but was so transfixed that I couldn't say anything to stop him." At the 1974 International Atomic Energy Agency General Conference, which Australia had the honour of presiding over, he organised shipments of Australian wildflowers and Australian wines for the President's reception, much to the displeasure of the Viennese helpers, who felt as Austrian wines should have been served. It was during this same conference that he spent several days trying to obtain travel information for the imperious Sir Lennox Hewitt, who arrived at the last moment with his daughter in tow, brushed Dad aside with his conference documents and informed him he'd review them at your office 9 o'clock in the morning. That was Dad's Saturday morning gone. Sir Lennox's only acknowledgement of Dad's work at the very end of the conference was to confirm that he had noticed the correction Dad had made to the letter, with no thank you. Next day, fortunately, he was gone. When the family finally left Vienna after 4 years, Dad had tears in his eyes as the plane accelerated along the runway. Tim, who had had a difficult time adjusting to Vienna at the start, said at the extension to 4 years at the 2-year mark, was fine by him, "I'm happy here now." They had all, in the end, fallen for the city. Back in Australia, after a period of time of what he described frankly as drifting at head office, he returned to Lucas Heights and joined the isotope division, where he would spend the remainder of his career applying radioactive tracer techniques to problems in industrial processes. Flow measurements in pipelines, sewage treatment plant behaviour, boat hull integrity, coal ash disposal. It was very practical and satisfying work. He became a witness in court. He fell off a speaker's platform at a conference in Perth while looking through a camera viewfinder, stumbled onto the floor of an auditorium and received, after some delay, the compliment that his paper had been one of the most significant at the conference. A noticeable episode from this period, briefly covered by Tim earlier, concerned a set of nuclear fuel elements and a mysterious build-up of gaseous fission products in the high-fire reactor heavy water pool. Dad was quickly pinpointed as the likely cause, given his experimental equipment. There was no evidence of fault, but rather than shutting down, he was appointed to lead the investigation. Using a small periscope and a technique inspired by an article in Time magazine about surgeons guiding catheters using magnets, he devised a way to mark tiny salt blisters inside unused fuel elements. The marked element was sent to Scotland, where the engineers were initially sceptical. They eventually found the blisters. They gave him a nickname, Hawkeye Hanna.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, let me say at the outset, as Daddy himself, when he began his chapter on music, that singing in a good choral group can give you a bigger thrill as as satisfying as playing as well in a sporting team. He knew this because he had done both and taken each seriously in his own way. His footballing career began, he wrote, in a stunning manner. In his very first competitive game, Essendon Grammar School against Caulfield Grammar School, probably in the under-8s, he was placed at full forward, a position he never played at again. Shortly after the game began, he was awarded a free kick, and from it, kicked a goal. It was the only time he touched the ball the entire game. Caulfield, he recalled, scored about 24 goals. He was not deterred. At university, he was playing for the Ivanhoe Football Club, where they finished the season as minor premiers, winning by 5 points on the scoreboard. Only for the goal umpires to get in a huddle and decide that one goal had been wrongly awarded and they had in fact lost by 1 point. This was the only time he experienced the thrill of winning a premiership, he wrote, but the thrill lasted for probably less than 5 minutes. He played cricket too, with what he described as reasonable technique, but no skill. He had grown up treasuring little booklets in which each page showed a frame from a moving picture of Don Bradman making a batting stroke. You flick the pages to see the stroke in motion. He absolutely loved them. His own batting, he noted wryly, was less cinematic. He made it as far as opening batsman for the Ivanhoe Cricket Club's second 11, and from there he steadily descended through the grades. He was also connected to cricket in a more glamorous way at Wesley College. His best mate Geoffrey Ponsford, known as Ponny, the youngest son of Bill Ponsford, one of Australia's pre-war batting greats. This friendship gave Dad free access to the ladies' stand tickets at the MCG in 1948. The first post-war Ashes series, where he watched the great Australian team of that era. 2 of the players had attended his own school. And then there was music. His father had been a singer and a choral conductor. Music ran through the family home at North Essendon. As a boy, Dad had been compulsorily auditioned by the head of music at Wesley College and compulsorily enrolled in the voice soprano section. Within a few months, he found himself singing with the school choir and the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra in the Melbourne Town Hall at a school's concert. This was a wow experience for him, he wrote, and he never forgot it. After returning from Vienna in the mid-70s, he joined Southern Shire Choral Society, became its president, and helping bring into being the Georgian Singers, a chamber choir named for the Georges River, which had some 15 years of successful performances across suburban Sydney. Later, he auditioned for and joined the Sydney Philharmonia Choir, where he sung for about 14 years, as well as taking on additional duties as a choir volunteer librarian, cataloguing over 1,000 items of music into a database of his own design. The Sydney Philharmonia Choir participated in the opening ceremony of the Olympic Arts Festival at the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, performing Gustav Mahler's 8th Symphony. Dad observed, boring to listen to, but exciting to sing. The City of Birmingham Symphony Chorus came out to join them for the Sydney performance, and then the choir travelled to London to sing at the Royal Albert Hall as part of the proms. With the Birmingham Choirs, the London Symphony Chorus, the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain, and conductor Sir Simon Rattle. The performance received a 5-star review in the Times. As the least musically trained member of his family, Dad noted with characteristic dry amusement. The irony in all this is that I have been the one I'm the only one who have performed international. Clearly this was a matter of opportunity, not talent. He was also part of the Sydney Choir singing in the Opera House forecourt for the remarkable global performance of Ode to Joy at the opening of the 1998 Nagano Winter Olympics. in which 6 choirs across 5 continents sang simultaneously via satellite relay. A small piece of world history to have been involved in, he simply said. He was a man of strong opinions and brisk honesty, with himself and with others. He never claimed achievements he did not earn and never understated a good story. He could identify the Liberator bomber that went down near his barber shop in 1944. He could tell you the exact formula of uranium belluride compound he made at Harwell, UBE-13, if you like. He could explain sewage stratification in polishing ponds. He once backed into a slip rail while looking through a camera viewfinder at a boatyard, fell onto the concrete and lay there trying to breathe while a doctor stepped over him and said, "Some people will do anything to get a photograph." His autobiography ends mid-sentence in a chapter on flow rates in pipelines. In a postscript dated in April 24, he wrote, "To end this tale here leaves things somewhat up in the air, unedited, incomplete. And in a state of some complex chaos. But recent changes have taken his mental condition to a point where he's unable to continue logically and sensibly with confidence. It's not a document of great influence, anyway, he said. We disagree. It's a document of enormous importance to us, to the grandchildren.
It is a document of enormous importance to us and the grandchildren, and to everyone who knew it. It is funny, sharp, honest, curious, and full of the same qualities you brought to everything: rigour, good humour, and a kind of straightforward wonder at the world. You called yourself mediocre. We call you ours. Thank you.
Hi there. My dad was Graham's big brother, and I have to say that I was born in England and I didn't know about what family was about. But as a little girl, you guys came over and I started to realize what joy there is to be part of this wonderful family. And my parents, when they came back from England, didn't want to go to Adelaide. No, it's the other state. That's the state where I come from, sir. Victoria. They wanted to go to where the beaches were. And there was one other really good reason for coming, and that was you guys and your dad and you wonderful woman. And from then on, my life was full of lots of beautiful experiences, including probably some of the recent ones were to do with singing in the choir. And we were both librarians, and we used to have great discussions about what you should do with these things. So that was one thing I did remember. I also remember the time in the boats. That seemed to be such a wonderful part of your life. And that was, I think, that had a lot to do with where they made sure you lived. I could go on for ages. Beautiful Christmases, going to the, what's that place after Christmas with all the boats? What's that called? Yeah, we'd always be out there with you guys. And just so many beautiful little memories like that. So I thank you for that, and for all of you for enriching our part of the Hanna's lives. Thank you.
I was married to Eulogy, who was Graham's niece. In 1973, Eulogy and I visited the Hannas in Vienna, and we received as we've received many times since, their beautiful hospitality.
With all my antics, misbehaving, running with the authorities at school, and hobbies that I undertake, and invariably put me into medical centres or hospitals. We sort of put him into an early grave. But obviously he was a very tolerant and hardy man. His autobiography doesn't cover all of things that he did for us and gave us as a family. Experiences that he gave us would take hours to relay, so I'm just going to give you some of my highlights. Summer camping holidays around Europe, Greece, Italy, Australia, always somewhere new, always somewhere incredible, sometimes with cousins, sometimes not, but yeah, great times. Skiing holidays, skiing in the backyard. He even took us in the early days to some random paddock in rural Vienna to learn to ski the very first time without instruction or anything, which ended up with Rob in hospital breaking his leg because he was trying to ski on one ski. He taught us to be handy. He gave us the DIY mindset, and that was supported by a garage full of tools and offcuts of materials. So great opportunities to play around and build and create stuff. In Vienna, I joined the Boy Scouts at the American International School, and the Boy Scouts, they run an annual event called the Pinewood Derby. You get a block of wood, a couple of wheels, and you go carve a car out of it, and it goes down a slope, and you race against all the other Boy Scouts there. So, being a scientist, he created this car that I still have today, but ran through the whole event totally undefeated. I used to take us ice skating on frozen lakes in Austria. You know, we'd spend a weekend away or just a day out from Vienna during winter, and you know, he'd always throw our ice skates in the back of the car, and you know, we'd come across some frozen pond that had people skating on it, so we'd be out there too. So it gave us a lot of opportunities like that. Also in high school, I had to do Saturday sport at the school I went to, and he was generally on chauffeur duties. And we used to listen to the Goon Show. It was on the radio. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but we used to laugh like crazy listening to that show. So funny. He was also a fan of the Muppets, especially the old guys, Waldorf and Statler. He used to sit up on the balcony and raise everyone who was ever on the show. During, I think it was the late 70s, we were getting the house extension, and I was just mucking around. Dad was doing something. I dropped something, whatever I was playing with, down between the floorboards, and I stuck my head down there to get it out. And it's probably a bit further down than what I thought. And I swore. Next thing I know, my arse was on fire after that was one of many times that happened. Also, 2019 at 87, boys, we did a trip down to Melbourne, watch Essendon and Swans play at the MCG. He also took the opportunity to show us his old stomping grounds where he used to play, where he lived and where he went to school, and we were able to catch up with some of our relatives down there too after the game, which was really special. He loved sailing and boats, which I think we all love the water now because of that. And probably one last thing for me, I also got to go skiing with him in 2004. I think it was 72. I spent a week skiing with him. He was still skiing really well, but in his brain I'm sure he thought he was still in his 40s, but this time it was me telling him to slow down before he hurt himself. That's all I've got.
Graeme. She's entitled at Celebrating Graeme. Please forgive any inaccuracies in the following. My memory of sequences of events is not good. Jackie, Ann and I are together today, Wednesday, in the house where Graeme spent an important part of his life. We are thinking of you all and remembering Graeme. This house now belongs to Jackie. When Grandma and Grandpa Hanna became our next door neighbours by moving to Rosanna, Graeme was young enough to still be living with them. I can remember seeing him at the desk in his bedroom studying hard to become a metallurgist. At the time, the age gap in his studies meant we didn't interact much. Then we heard that he had a girlfriend. Her name was Gwen. This was exciting to us. Of course, we all know where that led and to the existence of many of you gathered here today to remember him. Around the time of Dad's diplomatic posting to Vienna, Graeme was also there working at the Atomic Energy Agency, high achievers in the family. I want to share two special memories of you with him all. While I was living in Canberra, Graeme invited me to one of his choir concerts at the Opera House. What an honour. He took me backstage and showed me the area where most people don't get to see. It was an unforgettable occasion, and I will be grateful to him for that. The most important thing I will always be grateful for was that he contacted some of us about his diagnosis of depression and the difference Prozac made to his life. This was a pivotal moment for me, and as a result, my life was transformed by this knowledge. It was a brave and selfless thing for him to do. This is Graeme's lasting legacy for me. Thank you, Graeme.
I'll be like you. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to say, and I think I just wanted to share the privilege that I've had in life to have all four grandparents to this point. And the privilege of that was sharing with them and also getting to know them more as I got older. And I think upon reflection, the thing that sits with me the most with Papa's passing was his quiet love. It would be making the ice cream at Christmas for me because he knew I loved it. It was tinkering in the garage and making things for me or Benjamin or Zach, and beyond that, it was the fact that you could sit in a room with him and he didn't need to talk, he didn't need to say that he loved you, but you knew. And more than that, I see that now with the great grandkids. When he would see them, his eyes would light up, his whole face would light up, and those are the things that really stick with me now that I wanted to share. Thanks.
Married to Howard, who is Graeme's nephew. And I know the Warwick Hanna family would like to pass on their wishes to everybody today and to let everybody know how much the Graeme Hanna family has meant to the Warwick Hanna family. Although we lived in different states and different countries for part of the time, there was still a very strong family bond between the families, and as a relatively newcomer to the family, I was very aware of that bond and visiting the families. More recently, we've been honoured to share in Graeme's 90th birthday celebration and Gwen and Graeme's 60th wedding anniversary, I think it was, and getting to know the family and the generations more closely through those special family events. And it's lovely to catch up with everybody today. I know, I recall Howard, well, I didn't attend, I can remember the time quite well when they went skiing together, the Warwick Hanna families and the Graeme Hannas, and I've heard many stories of the three boys scooting down those slopes of Thredbo together, and very fond memories that Howard has of that time. And I know especially Pete and I would like me to say how much they really treasure the friendship and how good Gwen and Graeme were to them when they moved up as a young married couple to Richmond when Pete was studying, and I've heard many, many stories of that special times that they'd shared together. And I know that Margaret and Gwen shared a very special friendship ever since that time, and it's meant a lot to Margaret as well. So we have fond memories of Graeme and his family, and I can relate very much to the wonderful things that people have said about him today, because they've certainly captured the wonderful spirit of that very special man. And we're all feeling very touched to have been blessed to have shared times with him. So thank you very much.
Just one last thing. This video and a few other videos of the Hanna family is actually on a YouTube channel called Hanna's of Sydney. If you're interested in watching that and